Hello, and welcome to this exciting first episode of BC Advisory Dialogue. This podcast is the production of Bruit Costaud, also known as BC Advisory, a policy advisory, government relations, and strategic communications firm. Also, local partners of the world renowned Ballard Partners, foremost lobbyist firm in the US. Get more information from our website, www.bruitcostaud.com, or our social media handles, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Simply search for Bruit Costaud and in bracket, BC Advisory. This podcast is also aired on Ballard Partners platform. My name is Nnamdi Atupolazi, your host. And today we have a truly exciting guest with us. It's an honor to welcome the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. Thank you very much and welcome to BC Advisory Dialogue.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, so as we delve into the episode today, we'll be taking on a topic of huge significance, and that is the challenges facing Nigeria economically. There have been reports of citizens attacking and looting food reserves, and even attacking and looting vehicles transporting food items. Citizens generally complain about the rising cost of commodities, especially food items, even though the president has come out recently to say that the economy was not in distress. So hopefully the minister will be throwing more light on some key issues around this. So I'll come to you now. Again, welcome. We'll start by asking if it's possible to get a general overview of the current state of the economy and perhaps challenges towards achieving macroeconomic stability.
Thank you very much. The current state of the economy, simply put, Nigeria is not where it should be. When you look at the land mass, when you look at the population, the largest in Africa, and soon to be one of the third or fourth largest populations in the world, when you look at the natural resources, and of course, when you look at the quality of the human resources of Nigeria, definitely we are not where we should be. Currently, we are in a state of macroeconomic reform. We have a drive towards stability of the economic environment. It started May 29th, 2023, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu launched the first of a couple of very important, bold, and necessary macroeconomic measures to bring the economy back from where it was. And at that time, the general consensus and the reality is that the nation was on the verge of total fiscal meltdown, I would say. There was no longer any revenue coming into the Federation from the all-important oil company, NNPC. Rather, because there was payment of a unsustainable petroleum subsidy that was costing $10 billion a year, that was costing 2% of GDP, that threatened the very finances of the federal government. And linked to that was a foreign exchange subsidy. The arrangements for putting foreign exchange into the economy were lopsided, were inefficient, and lacked transparency, and created room for tremendous arbitrage and rent seeking. And so Mr. President removed those two subsidies, and by making those steps, he changed the economy, he saved the Nigerian economy. Because from there, you could now have a recovery of government revenues, and also you had stopped the incentive, for instance, to have flight of petroleum products across the border, where instead of selling at the subsidized price in Nigeria, it was smuggled, and so on and so forth. So that created the basis for a package, a program of macroeconomic reforms to essentially to get the economy growing again. We had sluggish growth, less than population growth of 3% in recent years. And that, of course, means increasing poverty, and that has showed up in the Human Development Index, it showed up in the poverty figures, it showed up in the unemployment figures. But that was then. Since then, there has been a program to stabilize the economy, which is having positive effects.
Okay, now, fine. We're talking about what steps the government, I know, is taking towards addressing the issues, but are there possibly, challenges the government is facing doing all of this?
Certainly, because what the government has attempted to do is get the economy growing again, and that meant dealing with inflation. That meant stabilizing the exchange rate, and it meant eventually getting interest rates to come down, and that will be the basis for having investment by Nigerians, investment by domestic investors, as well as foreign investors in two formats. First of all, foreign portfolio investors, pension funds, investment funds, foundations abroad that want to now buy Nigerian securities, invest in Nigerian securities, of course for profit. But that is the more those are the funds that come in quickest, but they also the danger that they go out quickest. So what the real objective in terms of attracting investment is to attract foreign direct investment, foreign investment in productive assets in Nigeria, whether it's a service sector such as hotels, or whether it's, of course, the food, agriculture, industrial sector. That is the real goal, because that's where that investment increases productivity, grows the economy, creates jobs, and of course reduces poverty. So in an attempt to achieve that from where we were, we have had, as you say, have there been challenges along the way, because the necessary reforms have been delayed for quite some time. It meant that the initial pain before the benefits begin to show would be much more acute. But I think Mr. President was aware that his reforms, his necessary reforms, would come with some transition pains, I would call them. Before the medicine takes effect, there is some bitterness. And in recognizing that, he had committed to making sure he does not leave the poor, the vulnerable, and the weaker in society behind. And that's why he had a tailored intervention program alongside the reform programs. And I must say that his measures were not, it's a package, it's not just two specific reforms. It's a whole package on the fiscal and the monetary side that is stabilizing the economy, is stabilizing the exchange rate, and providing the platform for the economy to grow again. So he intervened. He intervened in the agricultural sector, the all-important food sector. First of all, by providing grains, providing fertilizers to farmers ahead of this dry season farming. He brought an extra 200,000 hectares of farmland under cultivation for rice, wheat, cassava, and maize. And along with that, he has recently released 42,000 metric tons of grains, 60,000 metric tons of rice into the market, into the system, in order to alleviate the food insecurity that is now being felt. So it was critical, and it has been critical to intervene on behalf of the majority of Nigerians by providing food, providing increased agricultural production, and the benefits. As soon as the first harvest comes, dry season harvest in mid-April, say, the benefits, and we expect food prices then to taper. Then the wet season harvest will come. And that's why there's a prediction that food prices will fall, inflation will fall from its high now of around 30% per annum. But in addition to that, there's also intervention for the urban class, for the workers, for their transportation. So there's a move to implement a whole program of mass transit based on CNG buses. CNG gas is cleaner fuel, is cheaper fuel, and even electric. There is a move also to bring in electric buses so that we can have production of electric vehicles in Nigeria, particularly mass transit, production or conversion to production of CNG assembled buses in Nigeria, and then conversion. There are conversion kits, 50,000 or so conversion kits are being brought in to assist people who want to convert their buses, convert their cars, their taxis to the cheaper CNG fueled vehicles. And then finally, of course, at a time of elevated cost of living, the one thing that COVID taught us, that whole period taught the world, was that if you want to intervene to reduce poverty immediately, give people money in their pockets, they will decide their priorities. And so we have a situation now where there is food in the market. It's the elevated price, it's the consumer purchasing power that has been hit. So there is a conditional direct transfer program to cover 75 million Nigerians, because it's going to cover 15 million households, and they're roughly, of course, five per household. So in addition to giving people direct payments for a 3-month period of 25,000 naira per month for a 3-month period, in addition to that, there's also for nano industries, for the smallest of the enterprises, the food sellers, the water sellers, the repairers, the tailors, and so on and so forth. There is grant funding across to cover 1 million people across all the 774 local governments. And of course, for the small scale producers, there's cheap, low interest financing to take care of the production at the small scale, the micro and the small and the medium scale level. So it's a comprehensive intervention program to go alongside the necessary macroeconomic reforms, which are now beginning to show, which are now beginning to yield fruit.
You did say put money in the pockets of people and allow them buy what they want to buy. And now I'm going to go to the next question about the review of the National Social Investment Program. What's up with it?
As you know, I mean, we all read in the headlines that the funds were not going to where they were meant to initially when the program started. And sometimes, you do, sometimes when you launch these schemes, when you start with any endeavor, even on the playing field, a football match, the manager, he tells the players to go out there, and then he looks and he starts making adjustments. So adjustments are being made to the National Social Investment Program in order to tighten it up, to ensure the transparency and the accountability of and also the efficiency of giving people funds. So the key is to be able to make sure that the funds go to, it's not difficult to identify who it should go to, because it's meant for the poorest 60% of the population. So that's basically almost everybody that one would generally come across. So that's not, it's not targeted in a narrow way, it's broadly targeted. And the thing that the review has brought out is that now, as the social investment program is being relaunched, and even the nano grants to nano industries, which is also a direct payment, that we have learned that at the core of any direct payment is that there should be a Nigerian identification number, a NIN, as well as a BVN or a identified mobile wallet. So each beneficiary has a NIN, and each beneficiary either has a bank account or has a mobile wallet. And for people that do not have The National Identity Management Commission is there to capture them. So the whole process of ensuring that funds go to people who you can identify. So at the ex post, after saying that so many millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, or billions of naira, in fact, have been dispersed, you will now be able to name each person that is gone to. You'll be able to identify them. You will have a post disbursement report that uniquely identifies each person, and that's where you get integrity, and people have confidence and trust in the system.
It's commendable that the government is trying to make the entire process transparent and easy to understand. But another question has to be asked, because you did mention, of course, some other things that the government is doing to address the current economic situation, and one would imagine that there should be some level of collaboration with state governments and other agencies to achieve all of these. Take, for instance, you mentioned agriculture. One of the reasons that have been pointed out as why there's food scarcity of some sort is insecurity, and the reason why farmers can't go to their farms. So does this sort of relationship exist, and how effective has it been?
Thank you very much. It is, and it must be a team effort between federal and state and even local governments, between the monetary and fiscal. It has to be a team effort, and I think what's been achieved so far, and what has been put in place and is set for achieving so far, is a result of collaboration and consultation and cooperation across the board. And I can give you examples of that. But let me go back to the interventions. Of course, the number one intervention is a wage award, and the key policy that will come in to place. You like to have specific dates, and we know we can't do that any moment now, is a new national minimum wage structure. And in the meantime, at the federal level, there has been a wage award. And when you talk about what the states can do, of course, they too can do the same, because everybody knows that there's going to be more paid to workers. The fuel subsidy has been removed. One of the benefits of that should be, of course, helping workers with their, or the population as a whole, with their cost of living by increasing their disposable income. And of course, that is being done. And the new minimum wage is due any moment. And that's collaborative. It's not state, it is tripartite. The states are there, the federal is there, the unions are there, the workers, even the employers are there. So it's very much a team effort, a collaborative effort. And I think it's important to point out that there has been this direct payment to workers through a minimum wage. And similarly, Mr. President has announced that he's looking at what can be done for the unemployed, particularly the youth. When he talks about the fact that his objective is to achieve rapid, sustained, and inclusive growth. Inclusive means women. It means the young people. So he finds the current level of youth unemployment totally unacceptable. And his intervention there, which he has already announced he's working on, is to have a youth unemployment benefit that assists them until they get employment. In terms of the state governments, we go back to that. There is the National Economic Council, where there is coordination between, under His Excellency the Vice President, coordination between federal and all the states. And that is the platform, that is the arena in which that collaboration is achieved. So there is a platform for it, and it is being done. And likewise, I must mention that the team effort, the collaborative effort, it means monetary and fiscal also have to work hand in hand. We all know, and the law says, and Mr. President stands for rule of law. So he is keen to maintain the letter and the spirit of the law, which says the central bank is autonomous. However, within that context, it's one economy. So central bank is in charge of the instruments of monetary policy, but the overall economic policy of the government and the direction is set by Mr. President. And just to give you an example of collaborative monetary and fiscal policy at work, Central Bank recently indicated that they were stepping back from whether you call it intervention funds or development financing, and they were focusing on the core mandate, fighting inflation. Because without inflation coming down, you can't have a stable economic environment, you cannot encourage investment. Everybody is uncertain and they won't invest. And central banks signaled that they felt that inflation would be on average in 2024 21.5%. At the time, Treasury bill rates were 13%. The government was funding itself, selling securities and bonds at maybe at the top level around 13% or even lower, way below the targeted rate of inflation. So the Debt Management Office of the Federal Ministry of Finance and of the government immediately followed that signal and raised their own interest rates. And that was by selling more bonds, because if you want to sell, the more you want to sell, the lower the price you have to accept, the higher the rate you have to be willing to pay. And that automatically triggered the interest of foreign investors, foreign portfolio investors, and it brought liquidity, dollar liquidity into the system. The figures have been announced, we all know, but that is how that mechanism works. And that has brought dollar liquidity, which is much needed because there are some outstanding dollar obligations which need to be paid down. But it's just to give you a sense of how it works, and the fact that on the fiscal side, the government in raising rates has to prepare for and has to accept higher debt service. And it's because we're confident of the fact that we have got control of revenue that we were now able to pay a higher rate, help the economy, help central bank, help the monetary side of things by attracting dollar inflows into the country.
And now talking about FDI, are there specific strategies towards attracting this foreign direct investment you speak about? And what about the business environment in the country? Because there have been reports about some multinational companies exiting the country. So are there strategies the government has to attract FDI and make sure that the multinationals here stop leaving, probably bring more in?
The way I would answer it is that you had earlier alluded to the issue of security, which is an important variable. But let me take us back to the key issue in the economy in terms of what is the quickest way out of the foreign exchange liquidity squeeze, what is the quickest way out of the fiscal side of giving the government enough revenue, because the government doesn't have enough revenue for critical infrastructure and for social services. Our tax to GDP ratio is about 10%. Our revenue to GDP ratio is about maybe 13, 15%. That is government revenue as a percentage of the total wealth created. Even our neighboring countries is double that. So the number one way is to get oil prices, oil revenue up. The prices are still elevated. And as you know, in June 2023, the oil production and sales were roughly 1.25 million barrels per day. Now it's up to 1.65. That's the number one source of bringing in dollars and revenue into government's coffers that is non-inflationary. So what is required is to stabilize the environment for investors, whether foreign investors or Nigerian investors. And we must admit, Nigerian investors, whether it's in the banking system, fast-moving consumer goods, you can see they give anybody a run for their money. So it's not so much that we want conditions for foreign investors, we want conditions for all investors. Similarly, when we go abroad and we talk about attracting foreign investment, we also look for opportunities for Nigerian businesses to be able to invest efficiently and obviously profitably in those markets abroad. So it's a two-way thing. And the key to growing the economy is, first of all, stabilizing it. And once it's stable, then we can talk about what you mentioned. What are the additional incentives that we need to give? At today's interest rates, we know that small and medium scale businesses in particular need help with interest rates. Even larger businesses may need it so that they can invest and employ. So those are things that are very much in our sights. And of course, security. It's improved security that has allowed sales of production and sale of petrol of crude oil to be at 1.65 million barrels per day, as opposed to the 1.25 that Mr. President met in June 2023.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up, because I had mentioned 1.8 something earlier. So I was about to point out that it was higher, but now you've corrected that. Now, you're talking about revenue, government not having enough revenue. And you've mentioned, oil as one of the, steps being taken to raise oil production. But I'm sure definitely there have to be other, steps the government is taking to boost revenue. And also, what about the issue of tax administration? What about issues of, public spending? How does government plan to manage all of this to ensure physical sustainability?
You're absolutely right that it's not just oil revenue, and non-oil revenue is critical. Tax revenue is critical. And if you know anything about Mr. President's antecedents, the first thing he did in Lagos was that a quarter of a century ago now. The first thing he did was to get hold of the revenue. And what he did was that he used digitalization, he used the latest technology to block leakages and to improve efficiency of monitoring and collection. And it's exactly the same thing that he has done at the federal level now. The revenue of the federal government has been totally revamped. There's been application of technology to make sure that what is due to the federal government, particularly from its various revenue earning arms, agencies, and companies and enterprises, is now not taken based on compliance, and not taken at the end of the story, at the end of the year. Each day now that the federal government, a federal government enterprise earns revenue, government takes its share immediately, and it takes it seamlessly, and it takes it automatically and digitally. So there's no issue of, there may be a discussion later as to let us reconcile and so forth. But what we did is we looked at the rules, the regulations, the guidelines, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and so forth. And then we looked at the percentage that is actually due to government without waiting for whether there is a surplus or not, and so forth. So in a nutshell, government takes its revenue. The revenue of the government has been totally revamped. You talked about the expenditure side. And of course, also, there's a Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee that is hard at work, that is going to totally rationalize and revolutionize and improve the efficiency of tax administration in Nigeria. Fairly, and not necessarily by increasing taxes, talking about increasing efficiency, blocking leakages, stopping waste. And when we talk about stopping waste, we move to the expenditure side. The number one wasteful expenditure that has been stopped, of course, is oil subsidy. But behind that, there are tax incentives that are not fit for purpose, that are not going to people who do not warrant it, or they're being given for longer than is necessary. And there are duty waivers, for instance, which need to be tightened up to make sure that what the expenditure or on, because it's spending, if you don't collect a duty, you're spending it. You're spending money. So there is a concerted effort to identify and block all those leakages and loopholes. So for example, we move to a system of duty waivers where you pay your duty first and collect back later, as opposed to one now where it's ex ante, where someone applies and they are given a waiver because the transaction that is done after that, nobody sees it. Whereas now, if the person has paid and wants his money back, he has to prove that he has done the transaction which he said he would do.
A lot has been said about the implementation of the original report, and people have been asking questions as how much really is the government going to save, and how effective will it be going forward?
I think that's one of those things that waits to be seen. You look at items, you look at issues, you look at situations, and you take a decision that this is the policy we're going to implement. This is the particular initiative we're going to launch, and then you look to see intuitively if you can rationalize, if you can achieve economies of scale, if you can save on expenditure, on duplication, you should. It should be positive.
And still talking about money now, worries have been there about the rising debt profile of the country. Are there strategies to manage the debt profile and to ensure immediate sustainability and long-term fiscal sustainability?
Yeah, I think we talked earlier about the rising debt service costs that the higher interest rates would yield, but we also are looking to bring down inflation and bring down interest rates. The budget has a certain amount of borrowing in it, and that borrowing within the budget, if we have the discipline to stay within the budget, and even if we are successful with revenue side, we'll even have less pressure and less need to borrow, all other things being equal. And that is within reason. It's within 40%. If you go to Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, there's 70% of the GDP is their debt is 70%, 80% of their GDP. Ours is under 40%. It's very comfortable, and it's not set to rise in any significant way. In fact, with what we have said about revenue, it's set to fall.
Now, maybe we'll go towards a bit towards what it seems the government has been able to do. Sometime around January 24th, the NBS did release a report that all shares indexed had crossed the 1,100 mark. How was this achieved?
I think we are looking to grow the real sector, mining, agricultural processing, industry, improved investment in power, improved investment in gas, and an incentive. Some fiscal incentives are being announced recently that will yield results in terms of gas investments in the gas sector. So that is where government is concentrating. The issue of financial activity, the markets are important, and so secondary market activity is the importance to government. Apart from that, you need a well-functioning market, so when you want to raise funds, it's there. You need that market there, and that's why Nigeria can raise funds on the domestic market comfortably, and is exploring and looking at even raising foreign currencies securities on the Nigerian markets, because Nigerians are holding foreign currency. Nigerians abroad, Nigerians in Nigeria having their money abroad, and even domestically. So within that context, if people are happy, the stock exchange is almost like a barometer of people's optimism to a certain extent. But it can also be that, look, they're afraid to invest in the real sector. They just put their money in shares and trade them up. So we welcome it, but that's not where the concentration is. That's not where the solution for the growing the Nigerian economy is. It's a reflection of various sentiments, and probably a reaction to the fact that people want to be in a less risky, less long-term investment instrument. But it shows that Nigerians have savings.
Now, what we just talked about regarding the shares index, and of course, from time to time, we hear things, some statistics about inflation rate coming down and all of that. But there's always this thing people would say when they want to scoff at what the government is saying or doing, and that's the fact that people at the grassroots probably don't understand all of this grammar. So they want to ask if there's a way that the government is able to effectively communicate to the grassroots what efforts are being made to calm the frail nerves, to just carry them along at the grassroots level.
We expect people like BC to help us with that. That's why we are talking to you, we're explaining to you. We know you have wide reach, and we know you have the ability to carry the information on. And what you say about communication is well taken. But at the grassroots, even within this context, we are putting money in people's pockets so they can put food on their families' tables.
And just before I let you go, is it possible to set some sort of parameters with which the public can judge your administration at the end of the day to say, yes, we can judge you based on this, on this, on this?
At the end of the day, Mr. President will be judged on his ability to grow the economy, create employment, reduce poverty. And within that context, he's going to be judged on inflation, he's going to be judged on stabilizing the economy, increasing investments, increasing government revenue, managing government expenditure. Those are all ratios that are measurable. Improving liquidity of foreign exchange in the market, because if you are growing this economy, you have to import machinery, you have to import raw materials to keep the jobs here. So you do need that foreign exchange liquidity. So the ability to attract foreign direct investment, which brings those dollars with it, is also one of the measures. And I think bringing people out of poverty, as I've said, is the key measure.
All right, so this is where we wrap it up in this episode. Sincere thank you to the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. It's been a pleasure having you on BC Dialogue.
Thank you for having me.
And together we have shared valuable insights into the challenges and strategies surrounding Nigeria's economic landscape. His expertise has provided surely deeper understanding of the complexities at work. Do well to keep in touch with BC Advisory on social media so you are up to date about the next episodes coming. We'll be back soon with more thought-provoking conversations. But until then, my name is Nnamdi Atupolazi. Thank you.